Report Story. Chapter 5 True North. Awkward. Awkward is the first word that comes to mind when Izuku asks her, "How are you?" as he's fiddling with his tea kettle in his kitchen. She pretends not to notice when the spoon he's wielding goes spinning across the tile floor, even though it sounds like a hammer hitting an anvil in an empty cavern. The sound seems to bounce off every available surface in order to amplify itself. She stands, awkwardly, in his living room, trying very hard not to look at the couch, and hoping there will be somewhere else for them to sit. When he re-emerges from the kitchen, he hands her a cup with his prosthetic arm, and when she notices his other hand is trembling, she wonders if that is why. Their fingers brush for just a moment and her stomach flips. Awkwardly. Tumbles around sort of like a first-year gymnast who's let the springs in the floor get away from them in a double tuck. His face flushes, and Ochako is glad that at least she isn't the only one who feels like a shark forced onto the sand and asked to walk. It took millions of years for fish to sprout legs, she realizes, and she wonders if that's how long it will take for her and Izuku to find their own footing again. He sits on a chair next to the couch and Ochako frowns at the remaining seat cushions, unwilling, yet, to use them. Instead, she sips her tea as she meanders over to Izuku's impression collection of pro-hero action figures. The beverage is too hot and the tip of her tongue screams as she drinks it. She knows she will be unable to taste her sweet mochi treats for a week, but she doesn't stop, allowing the searing liquid to slosh into her mouth and burn a trail down her throat because it is still easier than trying to say something. The action figures are arranged on a set of shelves to the right of the television, in front of an oversized window. Even as she bends down to inspect them closely, Ochako knows they are well cared for. Not a speck of dust is visible on a single one as they are haloed by the late afternoon sun. Endeavor, Kamui Woods, Mount Lady, Wash. Ryuku. Ochako smiles at the small polymer rendering of her old mentor, Mirko, Edgeshot. Hawks, Best Genist, the original Ingenium. Vlad King, Present Mike, Eraserhead, and Midnight. 13. Ochako smiles fondly, reminiscing on her memories of each of the heroes represented on the top shelf, some lost in the conflict and others still active. Hawks has made quite the name for himself in the aftermath, with Fumikage Tokiyami and Dark Shadow not far behind. Their maneuverability made them both key assets in the final stand against the PLF, and even though her old classmate had ended up blinded in one eye, the patch did nothing more than augment Tsukuyomi's edgy image. The second shelf was more personal. Old classmates including Tailman and Can't Stop Twinkling. Tentacle and Kriti. Ochako smiles as she looks upon the plasticized visages of her friends. Some of the poses are honestly a little ridiculous, but she feels a familiar warmth bloom in her chest anyway. The third shelf, however, turns that smile into something else. Something sad and reminiscent as she realizes it is more like a shrine than a collection. Because the third shelf holds figurines of Red Riot and Earphone Jack, Grape Juice, Welder, and Lizardy. Heroes lost so young they'd barely earned the title. Even if the losses of Eraserhead and Midnight had been devastating, at least they had been pros at the time. Adults with a wide breadth of experience, even if they were still too young. Promoted stories. You'll also like. Not all heroes wear capes. Some just have A.43.3K 1.4 kilo. Everybody. This is a suicidal, depressed Deku book with Dadmic. Will their bond grow? Will Mike fuck up? Will Izuku try to kill himself? Find out yourself. Number 1 Radio. Much needed love. Yandere Succubus Momo X Izu. 52.7K 834 after Wattpad had decided to delete this story out of nowhere. I and many reader were distraught. So I'm making a remake of the story from the ground up to compensate. Free. Onishots 150K3K. This is a collections of free X readers. Requests on this are now closed. Return of Mokuden discontinued 3.6K45. This story is officially up for adoption. If anyone is interested, message me or comment on the story. Izuku's Harem Academia 193K 1.8 Qst. Read. After all. Omfluke 11.4K 802. Will edit once I'm free. N. This is a work of fiction, and any similarity with other works is purely coincidental. Excuse grammatical errors and misspellings. Eng. I am. Sequel of. UR check mark 69.5K 1.8K. This book is the sequel of. You are so better read that first before going here. Tears of joy. Tears of joy. Thank you to that one reader that suggested this title. I can't see you sad face, but thank you. Barely older than she is now, Ochako realizes. The fourth shelf is much less densely packed than the others. On it are only a handful of figures. Dynamite. Froppy. Glacial blaze. The second ingenium. All might. Gravity. It's as if Izuku has collected a squadron of companions in miniature plastic. She wonders if it somehow makes him feel less isolated. Where's Deku? She asks without looking up, perhaps without thinking. She can hear Izuku sputter and choke on his tea. She wonders if his is also too hot. Wonders if the roof of his mouth is peeling away the way hers is, as they both look for a reason to maintain the silence stretched between them. I didn't think that would really be appropriate, he says, trying to chuckle. The sound just comes out as a rasp, weary and uncertain. And when she turns to look at him, he is beet red and staring at the cup in his hands. It occurs to her this is the closet she's been to him since he sat beside her hospital bed. Her eyes skim over his body, cataloging the newly acquired scars. The sunburned skin at his nape and the darkened freckles across his nose, features her father once had, too, from spending too much time working in the sun. Unlike Chataro, though, Izuku has deep creases between his eyebrows that nurture the worry she already feels blossoming in her heart. Ochako thinks he's too young to already have such obvious worry lines etched into his boyish face, but then, it seems as if a lot of people in her generation have been too young for most things. I pre-ordered the special edition Uravity set that's being released next month, he says. She can feel her face flaming, sweat prickling at her temples as the blood rushes to her face. When they make eye contact and he notices her embarrassment, Izuku's mouth slowly pulls up in a giant, genuine smile. And it's as if someone has yanked an anvil off her and finally allowed her body to rise from the depths of the sea back up to breathe. Because she cannot remember the last time she saw a smile as beautiful and wholesome and true as this one. She giggles, bringing one hand up to try and hide her mouth. Same old Deku, I see. The smile falters, and so does his hand. Steaming tea dribbles over the rim of his cup and onto his silicone fingers. It's strange to watch someone not react when it looks as if they're being burned. Sorry, he says, no one calls me that outside of work anymore. Ochako doesn't frown. doesn't let herself, but she feels that anvil come back and rest firmly in the middle of her chest. As Izuku dries his hand against his shirt, Ochako makes her way toward him. The living room setup is simple with a small couch and the chairs set kitty corner to one another in front of a low coffee table. Across from the couch is the television with an entertainment center underneath it. The couch cushion closest to Izuku is the one where Himiko Toga sat stroking his hair in that photograph, and Ochako can't seem to dispel the image from her mind as she approaches, no matter how hard she tries. Still, she came here for a reason, didn't she? So she takes a deep breath and perches herself on the edge of the couch. When she sets her tea on the table, Izuku follows suit, those deep lines between his eyebrows becoming more prominent as he watches her every movement. I'm sorry, Deku. She chews the inside of her lip as she attempts to figure out how to say what she wants to. I should have made more of an effort to keep in touch after everything, she finishes lamely. Ochako just hopes he understands what she means by everything. After they battled for their lives and the future of the world. After they both nearly died in a desperate gambit to show Japan that heroes still existed. After all the sorrow and loss and confusion and grief. After his betrayal, Ochako thinks she understands why he left UA, thought they've never once spoken of it. And she remembers that deep ache in her stomach and her heart in the weeks after his departure, or when his mother held her as she cried over the loss of her best friend. She knows by now she should be over it, that it shouldn't matter in the larger picture of all they've fought for and lost. But still it remains, a dull thrum in her mind, like someone is flicking the back of her head over and over again. He left her behind, and she wonders if any explanation he gave, whether in person or on that stupid piece of notebook paper, could ever have been enough for the young girl she was then. Whether any amount of apology would have made up for his absence. She wonders if anything she does now can repair the wound. She fears perhaps it festered too long in the wake of his leaving, in the months and years after, when he stayed away even when opportunities to return presented themselves. But as she watches him continue to fiddle with the cup in his hands, nervous and unsure as ever, she sees pieces of the boy she loved, the determined hero in training who excitedly snapped a picture of his provisional license to send to his mother. And she thinks maybe that boy must still be buried somewhere inside the pro hero he's become. Deku, her Deku, not the world's, exists somewhere within him, and she wishes nothing more than to draw him out into the light. When Ochako's hand touches his, it is all Izuku can do to keep the teacup from flying across the room. He stutters and sputters and stammers, but none of the words are actual words, just a jumbled mass of syllables that tumble from between his teeth without any sort of permission from his brain. Because the feel of her fingers against his scarred hand is more electric than the zing of one for all when it activates. He feels every nerve in his body come alive in a wave. His ruined shoulder tingles as if it's trying to remember how to give his missing arm goosebumps. How are you doing? She asks, with everything. There's that word again. Everything. It seems wholly inadequate, and yet he knows there is no other way to encapsulate the utter totality of what she is trying to ask him. And as he calculates his answer, Izuku is fairly certain he does not remember how to breathe. Because Ochako is so close and her voice is so soft and his hand is itching to turn over and lace his fingers with hers. I'm okay, he says. His gaze darts to hers when she snorts in response. I know we haven't seen each other in a long time, but even I can tell that's bullshit. Izuku's eyes go wide when she curses, and she gives him a playful smile that he returns. You sound like Katsuki. He watches the mental calculus she does trying to figure out exactly what he means, so he elaborates for her. He and Todoroki were here earlier with manga Fukidashi. Oh, she says, her smile bright enough, he thinks, to light the whole city. Do you see them often? Izuku fidgets, pulling his hand away from hers as he pretends to fix the creases in his t-shirt. He does everything he can to ignore the flash of pain that zips across his companion's face as she retracts her hand to settle it in her lap with its twin. No, he says, I never see them, actually. We had a bit of a falling out, I guess, a few months back. Izuku pinches the bridge of his nose to relieve the tension he can feel building there. Today's the first time I've seen any of them since. A short, bitter laugh races out of his mouth before he can stop it. I guess that's how you know things have really gone sour, huh? Ochako chews her bottom lip as she thinks of what to say in response, and Izuku tries very hard not become transfixed by the small action. They're just worried about you. So am I. We care about you, Deku. I care. And I'm sorry I haven't been very good at showing it. There's silence after that for a long while. It's not necessarily uncomfortable, but it doesn't feel natural, either. Not like it used to back before Jakku. Before Izuku was told he'd be the last person to ever carry the burden and the honor of One for All. When they would study together in total quiet, and it felt like nothing could intrude of their companionship. I wanted to talk to you about something, actually, she says, dragging his mind away from the bittersweet recollections of UA, memories he still does not know whether he should cherish fondly or banish altogether. He hums to let her know he is listening, pressing his fingers together, watching the way his skin of his right hand flexes against the man-made digits of his prosthetic one. I, I went to Avernus today. I spoke with Toga. Izuku was not sure what he expected her to say, was totally unprepared for her visit and so had no idea what its true purpose could possibly be. But as soon as the words are out of her mouth, he knows this is the last thing he expected her to be here for. He just stares at her, then, and she looks right back at him with those beautiful brown eyes. He always admired the sparkle in them when they were at UA together, and it hurts a little to realize that's all but faded, now. Her eyes are still kind, still open and honest, but they look dimmer, like a star slowly dying. He notices other things, too, the light silver scar along her left jaw and the way her face is slimmer than when they first met. Her hair is mostly the same, if a little longer, and he can see even with her winter clothes on that she's put on a lot of muscle. He's seen her, of course, on television or in the news, so he knows all of this. But it feels different, being so close to it, as if he can truly admire the hard work she's put in, the strength she has devoted her life to developing so she can be the best hero possible. And if Ochako has spoken with Himiko Toga, he knows that strength extends well beneath her muscled exterior. You didn't have to do that, he says, and he's surprised by the amused smile his response beckons forth. Of course I did, dummy. You weren't gonna do it yourself. His heart flutters when she teases him, feels like it's about to take fly up and out of his ribcage into the cosmos. Almost as if gravity has reached inside his chest and brushed her fingertips against it, set it free of its calcified prison. The flutter turns into a tremble, which makes its way to the rest of his body when he asks, Did she tell you about that night? Ochako's amusement fades into something warm and gentle. She lays her hand over his again, but this time she twists her wrist until their palms are flushed together and she's leaning across the space between them to hold his hand, really hold it. The last time he did this, she was unconscious in a hospital bed and he had just watched All Might die so the world could be saved. Momo told me when it happened. Izuku stares at their intertwined fingers as if their hands are the most interesting piece of art he's ever seen. He scrutinizes the way they tangle together, notices for the first time the silicone sleeves over her pinkies. They're flesh-colored and easy to miss, but he imagines they make certain daily tasks much simpler. He can't look at her face. Can't meet her eyes. He is far too deeply and completely embarrassed that Ochako Uraraka has known for years about his weakness, about the foolish hope he let live on his heart that she would one day come for him. Forgive him. Want him. I'm sorry, he says even as the apology feels heavy and wrong and not enough. Why are you sorry? You didn't do anything wrong. Izuku is not entirely sure that's true, but he remains silent. I asked Toga to give her own statement, to show everyone how she deceived you. He shakes his head. No, absolutely not, that would require. Commissioner Sukauchi already has a sample of my blood. He's agreed to oversee its administration. Izuku pulls his hand forcefully out of her grip and runs his fingers through his hair. He squeezes his eyes closed. He will not cry again today. Not now, not in front of her. You don't have to do that, Uraraka. They'll. They'll say nasty things about you, too, and I don't want that. I'll be fine, Deku. But if they're ever going to leave you alone, you need to make them understand how it happened. Toga studied my every move. I'm probably the person she can imitate best. Once they see how flawless her impression is, it should take some of the pressure off so you can at least go back to work. If rumors fly about you and me, we'll deal with that later. He flushes again even as his heart pounds in his ears at that possibility. To be linked with Ochako would be a dream, even if it was only a fantasy played out in tabloid headlines. Izuku feels dirty even thinking it. I don't think I ever told you that Toga and I fought after Jakku, did I? He wants to look at her, to show her he is listening carefully by making eye contact, but he can't. Instead, he focuses on the cooling tea on the table in front of him, watching the steam swirl into the air and disappear like he wishes he could. She got an up-close look at my fighting style, then, my mannerisms in combat. I'm sure the rest of it came much easier after that. I have no doubt she watched me very closely afterward until she had me memorized front to back. Why? He asks. Because he's never understood why Himiko focused so entirely and determinedly on Ochako. He watches his guest from the corner of his eye. She fidgets in her seat, still perched on the edge of the couch as if she's about to leap off it at any moment. He wonders whether she's just prepared to leave him at the first opportunity. Toga and I were very similar, I think, in some ways. And during that fight, she asked me. She made me question some things about myself because of that. Izuku is so surprised by her answer that he finally does look at her because anything else feels like a betrayal of the trust she's giving him. It's a peace offering, he knows, and the prospect draws him in like a magnet until he's utterly fixed on her, cataloging every minute detail of her expression and body language as she speaks. I think Toga fixated on me because she saw parts of herself in me, and parts of me in her. She shivers just a little, like someone has dropped an ice cube down the back of her shirt. And I think that becoming me was her way of trying to reconcile the differences between us. Her fingertips press repeatedly together, her fingers flexing with each movement. Even with the covers on, she still instinctually keeps her pinkies lifted. Like if we could be the same person, the bad parts of both of us would melt away and only the good things would remain. She frowns, only slightly, just enough that he can see it, but only because she's sitting so close to him. He wonders if she became as good at schooling her features as he did for the same reasons. Izuku pinches his lower lip between the fingers of his good hand as he contemplates her answer. Himiko Toga has always held some mystery for him. No matter how often he attempted to analyze her motives, he always felt like he came up short. She is enigmatic in that he is not sure even Himiko herself fully understands why she does the things she does. She cried when we fought, Ochako says quietly. She ran away from me and I could see her tears. I never. She hesitates and Izuku waits patiently as she closes her eyes and takes a deep breath. I tried really hard not to think about how sad she must have been in that moment, to let me see her weakness like that. Not thinking about it made it easier to hate her later, to fight her again. She smiles ruefully, even if I lost that particular match. Izuku remembers how frail and pale she looked in Ida's arms as he carried her away from the battlefield to the medics. For a brief, terrible moment, Izuku had thought she might be dead. Dead. She'd already sacrificed so much of her body to help in the fight and to rescue civilians. He still isn't sure how she managed to hold on after all that, after she pushed past her limits as a hero only to be ambushed and exsanguinated. He always knew Ochako Uraraka was strong, but that may have been the first time the rest of the world figured it out. You didn't lose. You survived, he offers her, and she latches onto it enthusiastically. Sure did, but only because I had help. If Iida hadn't stumbled on us, I'm not sure what would have happened. She pauses, looking up at him through her dark lashes with a gentle smile on her lips. Sometimes we need a little help to get through the hard stuff. He can't stop the airy chuckle her words provoke out of him. Subtle, he says, very subtle, Uraraka. Something changes in her face when he uses her name, something warm and inviting. It's the first time he's said it in so long, but it feels right, the syllables familiar and sweet on his tongue. But she has always felt that way, like safety and acceptance. Like home in a lot of ways, even if the feeling is different from the one he gets when he visits his mother. He imagines it's the way a compass feels when its needle is perfectly aligned. Ochako Uraraka has always been a reassuring presence, even when she's been too far away to see. The memory of her bright smile is always tugging him forward, urging him to keep fighting, pushing, working. Always reminding him he's the Deku who can do it, that his dream is good and worthy, that he can be those things, too, if he just strives to be better every day. He wonders if she knows that. If she can feel the way he needs her, even if his only tenuous connection to her is pre-ordering her merchandise like a lovesick fanboy. I wish you'd asked for help sooner, she says in her frowns. Help with what? She gawks at him, as if he's supposed to know, and Izuku feels that same sour curl in his stomach he felt at all the funerals he attended in the aftermath. Like he is being judged for the things he's done in order to protect those who needed it. Help with what, Uraraka? He says, teeth clenched a little too tightly around his words. And the way her face changes when he uses her name this time is different. Cooler. Detached, even, which doesn't suit her in the least. Quote dot. Oh, I don't know, Deku. Saving the world. Navigating the Hero Commission's bureaucratic nonsense. Disputing rumors that you're in love with a convicted member of the PLF. Anything. Honestly, I'd be happy if you asked for help making the damn tea, at this point. He stands then, feeling a familiar frustration building in his belly, afraid it might boil over and erupt over the one person he fears alienating any further. It's not that simple. Why? Why can't it be simple? All you had to do was ask and we would have stood right beside you through any of it, through all of it. I did what I had to keep you and everyone else safe. We didn't need your protection. We needed your support, same as you need ours, now so take it, I'm offering. He shakes his head, flexes his artificial wrist. The sound of it is no more than a mechanical whisper, but it feels like a whip cracking through the silence between him and the person who used to be his best friend. The closest thing to one he still has, if he's honest. Pathetic as that may be, you're asking me to apologize for something I did almost 10 years ago, something I would do again given the chance because it was the right decision. No, it wasn't, but that isn't the point. Ochako is on her feet, now, eyes ablaze with righteous indignation, and he knows already she is not going to back down. Same as him. How can she ask him to admit that he was wrong? Does she not understand that if he miscalculated, if he made an error in that one simple thing, then everything that came after, all the loss and the death and the destruction, it's all his fault. You'll never understand, he says, and he means it even if it's a terrible thing to say. No one, not even All Might, could know how this weight he carries feels from within. The final user of One for All. The boy asked to fight the personification of pure evil and destruction or let the world burn. How can he ever make her understand? Someone born with a quirk utterly her own, that he must carry the expectations of generations before and to come. His life must be worth their sacrifices, must warrant his body, his quirkless, undeserving body, as this great power's last vessel. Do you think I'm still upset that you left? She asks. Isn't the whole world still mad at him for that? It feels like everybody uses that one decision as the inflection point, the first in a long stream of dumb and wrong decisions. Yes, of course, he says. She shakes her head and the way her bangs brush softly over her forehead makes Izuku realize Ochako is not angry. She's sad. She stands and Izuku's heart lurches in his chest. Don't let her leave, it screams at him. But he's frozen in place. It's as if he's a 1,000-year-old tree with roots growing down into the center of the earth that has suddenly sprung up in his apartment. Stoic and immovable, silent, stubborn, maybe, because if Ochako Uraraka can't understand him, what hope does he have that anyone else will? She is the most empathetic, kind-hearted person he has ever met, a true hero, his first friend. A reliable companion and comrade he knows would still have his back in an ambush even after they'd been estranged for so long. And he remembers staring up into the clouds after he left UA, wondering if she would forgive him. Wondering whether sacri- wondering whether sacrificing those bonds he'd worked so hard to forge would ever feel like too high a price to pay. As she slides her shoes on, it certainly feels as if it was. When she reaches the door, shoelaces flopping and clicking along the floor, he is still standing in the middle of the living room. He can feel one for all sizzling beneath his skin as he tenses every muscle in his body just to stop himself from reaching for the woman in his entryway. He has to stay put, no matter how much his heart begs him not to, because if he takes even a single step toward her, he knows he will not be able to stop what happens next. He already asked her to stay and she already made her decision abundantly clear. To continue to pursue her would be an insult to her own agency. If she wanted him, if she still believed in Izuku and not just Deku, she would have come long before now. Ochako's voice is small and tight as she pulls his front door open. The problem, Deku, was never just that you left. She turns to look at him over her shoulder and he can feel those familiar pinpricks in his eyes. It was that you never came back. And then she's gone and Izuku's apartment is bright green and red as his quirk bursts to life for a single moment. It's a beacon, a distress call no one will ever see. Like his heart is reaching out for her. It's the closest he's ever come to telling Ochako how much he really needs her, and he wonders if she even noticed as the door swung closed behind her. He looks the smudge of lip gloss on the rim of her teacup, the brew cold and bitter and useless. Izuku snorts at the irony. When Ochako finally reaches her house, she is exhausted through and through. The drive back from Izuku's apartment took longer than expected. As if her detour to see him hadn't sapped enough of her energy, she'd stopped on her way back to help clear debris from a car accident. The emotional drainage coupled with the unexpected use of her quirk makes Ochako feel more tired than she has in years. But when she hops down from the cab of the truck, she doesn't go to the front door. Instead, she removes her pinky guard, brushes the pads of her fingers against her thigh, and carefully ascends to the roof. Once there, Ochako flops onto her back, limbs spread wide and carelessly, as she stares up at the stars. She's glad, at least, that it is a clear evening. The sparse clouds are thin and wispy, barely covering even the weakest pinpoints in the sky as they make their way across the horizon. Ochako's brow furrows as she repeats her conversation with Izuku in her mind. She wonders if there is something she could have said differently, done differently. Whether she could have been more gentle with him. But even as she works through her irritation at his stubbornness, she cannot ignore the fluttery feeling in her stomach. Even years without seeing him cannot dim her affections, apparently. She is still overwhelmed by his presence, his conviction and his strength of will. Even when those same traits are pissing her off, her traitorous heart finds them endearing. She allowed herself the indulgence of reaching out for his hand a few times, and she wishes she'd given in fully, pulled him into a hug that would soothe every ache or worry he had. But that wasn't her job, was it? Maybe at one time it might have been, but they'd both been too young and inexperienced to know it. She wonders if he'd still want that with her, if some part of him still wishes she'd said yes when he'd asked her to stay. Ochako doesn't know if she made the right decision then, but she's sure there is no way to take it back now. No way she can erase the pain of her dismissal. Her lips quiver as the stars blur, warmth streaking down the sides of her face, a sharp contrast to the chilly night air. As she's swiping the tears away, Ochako pulls her phone from her pocket and scrolls to a familiar screen. She presses the speaker button and then hits play as she lays the device down on the roof next to her. It's always quiet for a moment too long, as if the person on the other end of the phone hadn't heard the beep to start recording. Ochako. Hey, it's Mom. And Dad, Papa's here too. Ochako giggles as she hears her mother shove her father away from the phone, chastising him for interrupting. I just wanted to call to say we love you and we miss you, sweetheart. And we can't wait for you to move home next week. Ochako laughs again as she hears the soft thump of her mother affectionately whacking her father on the shoulder. It's something she saw her do thousands of times in her life, and the way her father always rubbed his arm after as if she'd really injured him never failed to elicit a roll of Takiko's eyes. Don't mind him, honey. Your father celebrated with some coworkers tonight before he came home. We finished that house we told you about. I'll drive you by it when you're back. She can feel her mother's exasperation in the sigh she lets out into the mouthpiece. And Ochako feels her tears subside, feels her muscles relax even against the cold roof at her back. Anyway, her mother continues, we can't wait to see you, Ochako. We love you and stay safe, okay? Yeah, we love. But the message cuts off before her father can finish. At the time, Ochako wasn't sure exactly why she kept the message. They'd left her plenty just like it while she'd been at UA that she deleted with a chuckle at their ridiculous antics. But as she'd listened to this one, walking home after a long shift in Musudafu, her finger had paused over the button before she could wipe it from her phone's memory. She'd saved it, instead, and never really thought much of it until after they'd died. Now, as she presses the play button for a second, third, and fourth time, Ochako is glad she kept it. Their warm, happy voices feel like a blanket, a shield against the icy wind as she continues gazing up at the stars. Maybe it should make her sad, but it doesn't. Instead, it's like she can still feel their love through the phone. Like maybe they are only a train ride away, waiting for her to come home. It's hope and love and safety she can call upon any time she needs it with just the push of a button. A comforting presence she can swaddle herself in any time she feels alone or inadequate or scared. Her parents are still here, everywhere. Loving her, supporting her. She can still feel them in everything she does, and she hopes that feeling never goes away. Between the gentle press of her parents' voices, Ochako catalogues the constellations she can see. Monoceros, Cetus, Cepheus, Vulpecula, Perseus, Aquila with Altair burning bright as ever. Auriga, Gemini, Camelopardalis, Draco, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, and Polaris shining firm and bright against the dark of the sky. A fire that will never cease burning for as long as Ochako lives, and long after that. It is a constant assurance. A surety of things that have happened, and all that is to come. A reminder that she is only a very small piece in a larger puzzle, one tiny star in the sky. But that doesn't mean she is any less important, especially as she shines against the velvet darkness with her peers. One star is not enough to illuminate the evening. If only Polaris was blinking back at her, Ochako would be too blind to find her keys next to her on the rooftop. It is only because billions of stars band together that she can see in the darkness. Their light is only strong enough when they all work together to make it so. Chapter 6 Trampled Sand Castle. Takobo Municipal Beach Park looks much the same as Izuku remembers. Or at least, much the same as it was after he cleaned it at All Might's insistence. As he surveys the serene stretch of sand, Izuku recalls the sweat and tears it took to transform the dumping ground into a beautiful space for families and friends to enjoy the salty spray of the ocean. He doesn't really know why he's here. After Ochako left his apartment, he sat on the floor and expected to cry. But nothing happened, which maybe was worse, somehow, than if he'd collapsed into a sobbing, distraught mess. He'd spent the next day poring over hero news with scrutiny on his laptop. He'd turned his phone on only to be bombarded with dozens of new texts and missed calls, and so he powered it down once again. Even as he stands on the beach, it is nestled safely in the drawer of his bedside table. It is not so much chilly as it is cold, the bitter wind whipping its way over the surface of the waves and into his face. Izuku normally didn't have to worry about the chill. His body ran naturally warm with one for all pulsing through him. What might make him moderately uncomfortable would have set most people's teeth chattering. But Izuku, in his jeans and a sweater, pays the cool air little mind as he slips off his new red sneakers and stuffs his socks inside them, rolling his jeans up to mid-calf. He takes 2 steps into the waves as they lap against the shore, and he does shiver when the water first hits him, but the shock subsides momentarily. He is content, listening to the ebb and flow of the surf as the water gently pulls at his ankles as if trying to beckon him out to sea. Every few minutes, Izuku has to adjust his footing as the sand beneath his toes is dragged out from under him. So he steps to one side onto fresher sand and watches as his footprints are slowly raked away under the thin pull of the tide until there is no trace of him at all. It is not long before he hears someone approaching from behind. Unsure whether it's a fan who's recognized him from a distance, Izuku keeps his gaze trained on the horizon and his hands shoved into the pockets of his jeans. You'll freeze to death without a coat, Izuku. He smiles, closing his eyes to relish the care in her voice. I'm fine, Mom. Izuku looks over his shoulder to find Inko Midoriya wrapped in a knee-length parka he'd bought her for Christmas the previous year. The smile she flashes him is half glad and half something else, so he ducks his head as he turns back to look at the ocean. How do you know I was here? She chuckles. I'm not so old that I don't know how to set up alerts on my phone. She says, your green hair makes it easy for people to track your movements on social media. You're quite popular. He hears the sand shifting as she steps up behind him, careful to remain beyond the furthest tendrils of the water as it reaches up onto the shore. I should have called you. I'm sorry. She hums, yes, you should have, but that's okay. You're here now. I was going to stop by before I went home. I promise I wouldn't come all this way and not visit. I know. Izuku wonders how much Inko knows about him that he still hasn't discovered, yet. Like she was given a roadmap for his personality before he was born, but keeps it secreted away somewhere he'll never find it. His mother is, for all her faults, a kind and thoughtful woman. In a lifetime that has laid countless heartaches at her feet, she somehow managed to simply acknowledge those disappointments and then move forward. He is not sure how she does it, honestly. He couldn't imagine all the pain and fear he'd put her through as her only son. He sometimes questions what he'd done to deserve such a forgiving and loving woman as his mother. I've been watching the news, she says, and he flinches because of course she knows what's happening. Of course she's been worrying over him and he's done nothing, always nothing, to comfort her. He doesn't answer and he hates it. Hates that he doesn't know what to say to the one person who has always loved him, always been there to soothe his worries and help shoulder the burden of being himself. And of course his mother knows he can't help her. She must feel it in her bones, that he is incapable of being who she deserves him to be, because she changes the subject just as quickly. Mitsuki told me Katsuki and the Todoroki boy are in Tokyo today. Izuku grimaces. thinking of the two men lobbying for permanent prison sentences without review, for new methods of capital punishment they consider more humane. Maybe that's why he's out here, away from the noise of the city and without his phone. Maybe he's still just running away from the inevitable. They have too much public support to lose without the Hero Commission taking a stand against them, and Izuku knows from his own experience trying to force them to take a side that the Commission will remain mum and impartial. Flaccid and impotent in the face of something that might really make a difference if they tried. There is silence again as Izuku grits his teeth. He takes another step to the side when he sinks too far into the sand. And he wonders if the artificial peace he feels here on the beach will ever find him in the other parts of his life, whether he will ever learn to replicate the serenity here in his apartment or his work. The answer is likely no, so he supposes he should be grateful All Might forced him to clean the beach. Because at least he has a place to come back to that reminds him where he started. Some tangible thing he can look at and say, I did this and it's a good thing I've done. Because as time marches on, as the time between the defeat of All for One and the present lengthens, he is not sure he remembers exactly why he's done the things he's done. Why he joined the Hero Commission and agreed to bend to their whims. Why he saves people who do not want him to save them. Why he eats his meals alone as he watches clips of his old friends on the news. Maybe All Might was wrong. Maybe none of what they did was worth it. That's not true, Izuku. He chuckles, realizing he's let his muttering get the best of him again. Inko was always the best at parsing out the mumbled sounds to find the words dizzyingly hidden within them. Sometimes it feels like it is, he says, and it's the truth. Watching All Might die was one of the hardest things Izuku ever had to do because he could have saved him. He could have grabbed the man in his arms and leapt to safety. But All Might asked him not to. You have to let me go, but why? Izuku has never been fully sure. All Might was convinced that, somehow, when he died, Izuku would be granted the full power of One for All. That as a vestige, All Might would be of more use to Izuku than as a living, breathing mentor. Than as a friend. Than as someone of flesh and bone who loved him. Izuku, my hero. And Izuku doesn't even know if All Might's theories were right. He never had time to examine the intricacies because in the moment after All Might stopped breathing, Dabi was on him and Izuku had to fight for his own life in order to protect millions of others. Izuku might be the only person who didn't cry at All Might's funeral. But that is only because, in the crowd of thousands, he was the only one who knew it was his fault the symbol of peace had died. How could he ever be a worthy successor when he'd allowed All Might to perish through his own inaction? Inadequacy. He shakes his head. And all for what? Shigaraki is dead. Yes, but so are too many others. And there is still evil in the world, it's only wearing a different face. I did everything I was supposed to, he says, voice low and quiet enough it feels as if maybe the surf can rip it from his mouth and take it out to sea. And he shivers when Inko rests a hand on his back, the warmth of her palm just barely enough for him to feel it on the skin beneath his sweater. She's right, of course, he's not dressed for the weather. And when he looks down at his toes in the water, they've turned a strange purplish color. His mother rubs soothing circles on his back and it's like a trigger. The tears he's been holding back pour forth without restraint. Oh, Izuku. Her voice sounds exactly the same as it always has, filled with hope and warmth and love, even as he knows she's crying, herself. I thought if I won things would be different. I thought if I could stop Shigaraki, I would finally be enough. He hears her breath hitch, but he cannot turn himself to face her. He imagines that, despite all the love she has for him, which is plentiful and more than he deserves, she must be disappointed. How could she not be? Even with One for All, arguably the most powerful quirk to ever exist, he is still so useless. So incapable of changing his fate or making people understand that all he wants to do, all he has ever wanted to do, was help. Be a hero. Offer hope and solace to those without it. Maybe he hasn't always done it the right way. He's made mistakes, but who hasn't? So why do his feel so unforgivable? Izuku's head snaps up as insistent footsteps splash water up onto his rolled jeans, soaking his knees. A few droplets even reach his face, and he looks up only to find Inko standing before him, calf deep in the surf with her shoes still on. Mom, what are you? You listen to me, Izuku Midoriya. Her eyes are fierce and dark, brow furrowed. He notices the streaks of gray in her hair, still so unfamiliar to him, and the deepening lines around her eyes and mouth as she frowns up at her only son. I need you to really hear what I'm about to say to you. Do you understand? He swallows, nods. His cheeks are still wet with fresh tears, and he is impressed with how forceful Inko can sound even as she's crying just as hard, perhaps harder, than he is. You have always been enough. I know that. All Might knew it, and anyone else who is worthy of you already does, too. His lips wobble and he clenches his fists in his pockets. Izuku tucks his face down to shield his eyes from her with his unruly hair, but that same warm hand that rubbed his back a moment ago brushes his bangs away and grips his chin so she can capture his gaze. You don't have to keep trying to prove to people you deserve to be loved. You already are. He wants to say something. Thank her, or tell her she is the greatest mom he ever could have hoped for. That he is unworthy of her trust and affection. That it is a mistake to believe in him. Instead, Izuku wraps his arms around her shoulders and pulls her tight against his chest as they both cry. The insistent waves continue suckling at their feet, pulling the sand out from under their soles until she stumbles a little and he picks her up as easily as if she were a child in order to place her back on the dry sand behind him where she will be more stable. And Inko Midoriya, as she brushes her tears away, has the audacity to thank him. You don't have to thank me, Mom. And she doesn't. She shouldn't. After everything he has put her through, the last thing Inko should be doing is thanking anyone. She should be cursing her fate or demanding compensation for the scars torn into her heart. But she just smiles as her tears fall away like the sun peeking through storm clouds. Come on, she says, picking her way back the way she came, her wet shoes and pants dribbling into the sand around her feet as she walks. I'll make some katsudon while you take a bath and dry your clothes. As Izuku Midoriya drags his wet feet through the sand, red sneakers clutched in one hand, he realizes that maybe trying to follow All Might's path was the wrong decision. Because his mother's quiet resolve feels more like heroism as he watches her blaze a trail through the sand toward her apartment than anything he has done in a very long time. Ochako walks through the front door of her house in the dark, stripping away her costume as she announces her return to the emptiness. Her mother used to wash her uniform for her, but now Ochako has to delay her own sleep in order to take care of it herself. Likewise, there is no warm dinner waiting, only cold rice and fish leftover from the night before that she eats straight out of the container standing up at the kitchen counter. And when she falls once more onto that too small mattress, Ochako wonders how long this will go on. How much longer can she endure the reminders of their losses even in the face of victory? How will she ever rebuild a life strong enough to stave off the grief? It's late and she should be doing her best to fall asleep before she wakes early to repeat the day anew. But something prickles at the back of her mind. Something insistent and overbearing, that has been there since she visited Izuku in his apartment. And so she flicks on the light and crouches in front of her closet, rummaging through the mess to find an old cardboard shoebox. The box is nothing special, just a remnant from a pair of pink sneakers she purchased for herself her first year at UA. A rare impulsive buy when she'd seen them on sale while she bought her groceries for the week before returning to the tiny apartment she lived in before the dorms. Dorms. She still has the shoes, actually, and wears them for dirty outdoor activities where encountering mud is more than likely. Even with a hole in the bottom of one, she still likes them. The box had been a good, sturdy one, and so she'd kept it with some vague idea that she'd use it to organize receipts or school projects. Instead, it had become a vessel for memories, a keepsake box filled with little notes from Mina and Suyu and photographs she printed out from her social media pages. When she opens it, papers and pictures burst out of it like a spring. She giggles and takes a long, deep breath because she knows some of the things inside will be painful to look at. The first thing she sees is a picture of all the 1A girls, posing in their uniforms in front of the New Heights Alliance building. She doesn't remember who they'd roped into taking the photo, but the smiles of her friends are bright and energetic. Well, all except for Kyoka, whose arms are crossed over her chest as she pretends to roll her eyes, even though they all knew she was happy to be included. Next are some ticket stubs from movies Mina dragged her to. Terribly cheesy romances and comedies that Ochako liked despite herself. And there's a music festival Kyoka took her to after Momo promised to pay for all their tickets. There are countless little notes that were slid under her door after curfew or flicked onto her desk between classes. None of them make much sense out of context, but she treasures them anyway because she knows at the time they were important. She never had friends like the ones she made at UA. Sure, she had friends in middle school and even before, but not like her 1A peers. The bonds they forged there were unlike any other. Even though she had not seen some of her classmates in years and years, she was secure in the knowledge that if she needed support, for official hero business or otherwise, she could call any one of them and they would drop what they were doing to help her. Ochako wonders if Izuku realizes they would all do the same for him, or if he's convinced himself they don't all still love him just as they did when he was 15. There's a snapshot of her, Tenya, and Izuku from their first year, too. Izuku's face and ears as red as his stubby tie as Ochako wraps her arms around both boys' shoulders. She laughs at the serious look on Tenya's face. The boy always looks like he's taking a CEO headshot, even in his teens. Ochako yawns. She can feel her eyelids getting heavier and she knows she'll need to finish reminiscing soon. First, though, there's one thing she wants to find. The box isn't that deep, but the item she's looking for is still buried in the bottom, under countless other trinkets and pieces of paper. When her fingers brush against it, her breath catches in her throat for a second. She pulls it out. running her fingers over the worn surface as if she could restore it with a touch. The Netsuke looks much the same as it did the first time she ever held it, pulled it from a bag like it was a trick of fate. She wore it faithfully, perhaps foolishly, on her utility belt throughout her first year. She remembers when she put it in the box. It was after the first patrol of her second year. The compartment had popped open, sending the little figurine tumbling across the concrete on her lunch break. It reminded her of how it had jumped out into the middle of her fight with Toga. But whereas she had drawn strength from it during that instance, as she watched it bounce along the sidewalk in the wake of Izuku's departure, it had only made her frown. And so she'd put it away, seeing it only briefly when she'd added new memories to the box or sifted through them to remember better times after funerals. Now, as she worries the little All Might in her hands, for the first time in years, she feels that same warmth and hope it had originally inspired in her heart burst to life again. No matter how often Izuku visits, seeing Chizo Makaguro seated behind the bubble of glass in cell J24 is always a little unnerving. The former vigilante turned hero killer turned something else is always stoic and expectant when Izuku arrives for his monthly visits, and the young hero wonders how much of Stain's time is spent simply waiting. Izuku still finds his new appearance strange, hair buzzed short and muscles slowly fading as he spends an increasing amount of time buried in the earth. The J level of awareness still manages to see some sun occasionally, but only on the brightest of days, and Stain's usually tanned skin has turned sallow and pale during the course of his sentence. Hello, hero, Stain. Izuku takes his seat in the cool metal chair they always leave for him. He used to be escorted down personally, but given the frequency of his visits, the guards are now content to send him through the full body scanner, give him a pat down, and send him on his way. If anyone believed he'd try to break Stain out, things might be different. But since he's the one who put the man down here in the first place, he supposes it's a fair assumption on their part that isn't the case. So tell me, how are things on the surface? These catch-up sessions have become so expected that Izuku sometimes forgets why he started coming here in the first place. Stain was a villain, or had been, anyway, so there was little reason for Izuku to feel remorse at having put him in handcuffs and dragged his unconscious body to the authorities. But of course, things are rarely so simple. Because when Shigaraki's evil seeped into the soil and tainted the lands across the sea, Stain had sought Deku and All Might out, the last true heroes as far as he was concerned, and he had offered his loyalty and his sword. All Might had been more reluctant than Izuku, though it had taken a fair amount of convincing for him as well. But, true to his word, Stain remained by Deku's side in battle, and without his contributions to the fight, Izuku is not sure the heroes would have prevailed. That did not stop Deku from making the arrest. It did not stop Stain from resisting, albeit rather perfunctorily. And it didn't stop Izuku Midoriya from descending into the depths of a volcano once a month to update the man who'd saved his life on the comings and goings of the world above. How's the arm? Stain asks this every time, a too wide grin on his face, and Izuku wonders how much he relished the ability to slice through his shoulder with justifiable purpose. He imagines Stain has a lot of unresolved feelings about heroes that he poured into that one single motion as he waged war beside figures he would have once killed given half the chance. This latest one is actually pretty comfortable, Izuku says, holding the prosthetic out so Stain can inspect it through the glass. It moves more naturally than the others and it can stay powered up for almost 2 weeks on a single charge depending on how much I use it. Mei Hatsume has outdone herself, truly, though Izuku knows she had help from Melissa Shield's firm in America in developing the lightweight polymers used to create the nearly indestructible interior. The silicone laid over top looks almost like skin if you don't look at it too closely. Of course, in the dark, you can see the way the limb glows unnaturally at the joints. Still worth it? Stain asks as he sits back down following his inspection. Still worth it, Izuku agrees, though something in his eyes must give away that he's not being entirely truthful. What's bothering you, hero? What is Izuku supposed to say? How can he complain about anything to a man who has been sentenced to a lifetime of darkness? Nothing, really, he lies, just politics. Politics that may greatly impact your sentence and future, he doesn't say. Instead, he shrugs, you know. And Stain snorts. I do, indeed, even though he doesn't. Do you have any regrets? Izuku asks. About helping me. To Stain's credit, the man does not immediately answer. Rather, Izuku can see that he's considering the question thoughtfully. The silence stretches on and Izuku realizes that, without his phone, he has no idea how much time remains before he will be asked to leave. I have many regrets, Stain says eventually, but none that include you. Izuku wonders why. Wonders what about him could possibly make him so different from everyone else in the eyes of a man with such strong ideals. Especially when he is the person responsible for Stain's current living quarters. And he asks the question burning in the back of his mind, why me? Stain stands, walks close to the reinforced panel that separates them as if they didn't fight side by side to salvage the world, and peers through it. And Izuku feels like a bug under a magnifying glass, like Stain's gaze could burn him as easily as the hyper-focused rays of the sun. It's a dumb question, probably. Deku is a hero. After all, even Stain agrees All Might's successor is equally worthy of the title. All Izuku Midoriya can offer anyone, even a complicated and flawed man like Chizome or either of his alter egos, is Deku's strength, a hero's resolve. There is nothing else, is there? You think too much, hero. Izuku snaps his eyes up to find Stain staring back at him ruefully. I think you'll find things can be much simpler if you just allow them to be. Izuku ponders those words as he makes his way further down into the cone. And he wonders how a man like Stain could ever tell someone else to allow things to be simple. It must be a joke. But any mirth he might feel as a result of it is quickly gone when he reaches his destination. A dark cell on level O that bursts to light and life when the guard who's met him here brushes his palm over the reader. Hamiko Toga is curled on her side, half asleep on the floor. She bats her eyelids against the intrusive light before she focuses on her visitor. And then she jumps to her feet, her face alive with something that might be joy if he didn't look at it too carefully. Izu. What a surprise. She is quick to press her face against the glass. I've missed you, she says, and Izuku hates that he believes her. Izuku scrutinizes her features through the glass. Her cheekbones are too pronounced because she's lost weight and dark purple circles highlight the golden color of her irises. He wonders if this is what she looked like when she was forced out onto the streets to survive on her own. If she was equally drawn and scrawny as she learned how to live without the love or kindness of family or friends. How are you? He asks and something flickers in her eyes, but it's gone too quick for him to catch on to what it is. Well, it's been a good week, she says. You're my second visitor. Hamiko smiles, then, her cheeks dusting a light pink as she stares into his face. I know Uraraka came to see you, too. Yes, Ochako did come. She wasn't very pleasant, though. Sort of mean, actually. Izuku can't help but shake his head. Well, you did try to kill her, Toga. She shrugs, as if that should be an inconsequential thing between friends. And maybe for someone like Hamiko, it is he watches as she fiddles with the cuff of her jumpsuit sleeves. She's rolled them up because they're too long for her petite frame, and he's reminded that she is barely older than he is, was still all but a child when they stuck her down here forever. I wanted to ask you something, he says, and her eyes light up again when she looks at him. I wanted to ask why you never tried to hurt me that night or take my blood. You could have. I made it very easy. She giggles at him, but you never tried. Why? Hamiko smiles, flashing those sharp teeth of hers as she answers. I did try to kill you in the morning, she corrects him. I just forgot about your fake arm. He remembers the flash of her knife through the air, how he barely avoided a blow to the neck by allowing it to pierce his artificial wrist. You damaged the circuitry so badly I had to get a new arm, he says, and she giggles again as if he's told her a dirty joke. But you could have really hurt me at any time and you didn't. You didn't even pull the knife until I recognized you and jumped away. It's the second time today that someone in Avernus has made Izuku feel like the one being scrutinized when Hamiko tilts her head to the side to look at him as if the answer is so obvious he must be deaf and blind to not understand it already. She sounds different when she answers, thoughtful and more serious than he ever expects her to be. I always thought the only way to show my love was to become someone else. To be the same as the object of my affection, she says. But when you opened your door, the way you looked at me when I was her, I realized that maybe I wanted someone to look at me that way when I was just myself. She tilts her head back, like she's trying to look up at the sky even though it's impossible to see from down here. And so I took a chance. Izuku wishes he knew what that look was, wants to know how he can capture it and keep it secret and safe from the world. Because if Hamiko could see it, then the whole world might be able to, and that is an embarrassment he is unwilling to face. Unbidden, the question of whether anyone has looked at him that way forces itself into his mind. No birds come down here, Hamiko says, her face still tilted up toward a heaven that doesn't exist. Nothing comes down here. Izuku knows Hamiko Toga is a villain. He understands she is likely beyond rehabilitation. But as he watches her strange eyes water in the darkness of the cone, he wonders yet again if this can really be considered justice. Where stories live. Discover now.